School District was to honor and support every learner every day on the journey to become curious and engaged members of a diverse global community. A notice listing the time, date, and place of this meeting was posted on the public bulletin board of all Freehold Township schools, on the entrance door to the administrative offices of the Board of Education, on the district website at the office of the Freehold Township Clerk, published in the Asbury Park Press on January 7th, 2022, and sent to the news transcript on January 5th, 2022. I'd like to invite anyone who'd like to join us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call.
Mrs. Costanza here. Mrs. Coswino. Mr. Gardula here. Mr. O'Sullivan. Mrs. Patton. Mrs. Bowman.
Here.
Mrs. Vanatoli.
Here.
Mr. Amoroso. Present. Mrs. Lambert.
Here.
We have a quorum.
I'd like a motion to approve the regular meeting minutes from January 18th, 2022.
So moved. Second.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. I'd like a motion to approve the executive session meeting minutes from January 18th, 2022.
So moved.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. Motion carries. I'd like a motion to approve the regular meeting minutes from February 8th, 2022.
So moved.
All, second? Mary's the second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Motion carries. I'd like a motion to approve the executive session meeting minutes from February 8th, 2022.
So moved. Second.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. I'd like a motion to approve the special meeting minutes from our budget meeting, March 1st, 2022.
So moved. Second.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. And I'd like a motion to approve the executive session meeting minutes from March 1st, 2022.
So moved.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. Motion carries. Okay. Communications.
The only communication we have is enrollment. So in January of 2022, we had 3,502 students. February of 22, we had 3,508, compared to February of 21, where we had 3,606. And that's the only communication.
For President's remarks this evening, I'd just like to thank everyone who's joining us this evening. It's nice to be back in a room with everybody. For those of you that joined us on Zoom last week for the first presentation of the budget, I want to thank you all for doing that as well. Got some feedback from some of you, and like we mentioned in that meeting last week, anybody that has any questions regarding the budget can reach out via email to any board member who will get the question to Mr. DeVita. But he will certainly be presenting updates on the budget as they come up. As we mentioned last week, we don't have state aid or anything of the sort just yet. With that, I will move right into the administrative report from Mr. Dixon.
Good evening. Unfortunately, to start off this evening, I am sharing some sad news that one of our Katina parents, a mom of second grade boys, passed away after a brave battle with cancer. At this time, I welcome everybody to observe a moment of silence in memory of Eileen Ladley. Thank you. We've recently celebrated, again, this is a little outdated, but I didn't want to not share some of these things because they're wonderful things that are happening in the district. So we recently celebrated the 100th day of school, Read Across America. As I visited the schools and observed the celebrations, it seemed appropriate to provide an update to the board and community on the wonderful events and accomplishments occurring in our schools. The winter map window closed, allowing us the opportunity to determine our students' achievement levels and growth. All grade levels demonstrated growth from the fall map administration district-wide. We also compared this winter map scores with the last few years of winter map scores. Again, this data reinforced minimal learning loss on a broad level across grade levels for our students. That warrants a great thank you to our dedicated staff for their outstanding instruction and to our students for working diligently to reach these levels of achievement and growth. Several schools in the district engaged and recently celebrated the conclusion of the Great Reading Game sponsored by Learning Ally. There were approximately 2,000 middle schools and 4,000 elementary schools participating in this reading competition. Barkalow, Eisenhower, Katina, and West Freehold were all in the top 100, with Eisenhower, at the time I wrote this, in about 15th place. And congratulations to all of those students who participated. Our elementary school celebrated their 100th day of school, while West Freehold traditionally celebrated the 101st day of school with their annual Dalmatian Day celebration. Each school engaged students in themed activities that spanned across all content areas. We're also reaching that time of year when our kindergarten students have recently earned their reading power capes and were parading around the schools to be celebrated by the rest of the staff and students. Laura Donovan recently concluded their version of the Winter Olympics titled the Pauley Olympics. Each class was assigned a different country and competed in various events throughout the week. It was rewarding for me to watch because it was Mrs. Benbrook's observation, so I got weekly updates and videos seeing what the students were engaged. It was amazing, the enthusiasm and the connection to the curriculum. It was quite a feat for the staff to put together collaboratively. West Freehold students also participated in Winter Olympic themed activities during their physical education class. The staff and students in the district value philanthropic activities. The staff has been participating in Giving Tuesday district-wide fundraisers, most recently raising $1,500 for PACE by purchasing Radiating Kindness t-shirts to support their annual grant program. Other than PACE, staff across the district have donated over $6,000 to various charities and participated in the Adopt a Senior program for the holiday season. The most rewarding part of this initiative is that many of the fundraisers are organized by Freehold Township School District students and alumni. They're coming back to ask if we would sponsor their philanthropic activities. Similarly, our students are engaging in philanthropic activities. 1,668 students wrote Believe letters, which resulted in a donation of over $3,000 to a Make-A-Wish Foundation from Macy's. Project Eat food drives are being conducted in most schools, and Laura Donovan, 5th grade, was able to collect over 2,200 pounds of food for Open Door, while Katina collected toiletries for them during that month. Applegate's Project Eat collection was titled Super Bowl, S-O-U-P-E-R, and was a competition among classes. Katina collected toys for the pediatric patients at St. Peter's Hospital and recently worked with the Live Like a Unicorn Foundation to celebrate Be the Good Week in memory of one of our former students who lost her life to cancer, Liv Lipnicki. Erickson is raising funds for the Special Olympics while their very own Miss Caruso, and I just learned somebody else also, correct? The polar bear plunge, just Miss Caruso. Participated in the polar bear plunge to raise money for the same. West Freehold participated in Pennies for Puppies, during which time they asked students to donate 101 pennies for Found Dog Rescue Incorporated. Peer leaders at Barkalow worked with Mrs. Curatolo and Mrs. Cochran to collect items for the military and sent 32 boxes of toiletries and other items overseas. As part of their personal financial literacy classes, 8th grade students at Eisenhower participated in group projects focused on giving back to the community. Projects that actually were implemented included a shoe drive that yielded 147 pairs of shoes, a sports equipment drive for those who might need in our community, and a volleyball tournament to raise funds for the YMCA and drives for the Cancer Research Institute and for the Juvenile Diabetes Foundation. Since the beginning of the school year, we've had teams from our middle schools place in competitions and win championships. We've had students recognized with various awards and honors and been informed of students starting their own philanthropic organizations. We're looking forward to the opportunity to recognize those teams and individual accomplishments at board meetings in the spring. Finally, I'd like to congratulate our supervisor of math and science, Bonnie Hohenschild, for being selected to participate on the New Jersey Department of Education's New Jersey Student Learning Assessment Science Alignment Study Committee. I just thought it was important to share all of the great things happening across the district involving our staff and students, academically and also socially and emotionally.
Also, before we move on to the 2021 audit and the budget, I agreed to give a public service announcement. If you or any neighbors, members of your community happen to speak Ukrainian, and are willing to be translators. Children with cancer from Ukraine are being transferred to St. Jude's Children's Hospital in Philadelphia, and St. Jude's is in desperate need of Ukrainian translators for these children with cancer. So if you could spread the word, they can contact St. Jude's directly, and they can also contact some of the local parishes. I know St. Robert, Bellarmine, and I'm sure others are aware of who they would need to get in touch with, but if you could kindly spread that word throughout the community. Thank you. Audit?
Take a few minutes on the audit. Attached to tonight's agenda is the 2021 audit for your approval. Unfortunately, because the state was, again, behind in getting their information out to us. It's gonna give me back. All right, see what happens. So tonight is the approval of the 2021 audit. Unfortunately, it was usually done in December, but because the state was late in getting us their data, that we need to complete it as per one of the GASB requirements. It's here tonight. It's already been transmitted to the state and uploaded. Just a couple things I'd say if you want to look at the audit. There's a lot of information on here that usually the folks from Moody's and S&Ps want to look at. That's in the A's and B's schedules. If you're looking to see what we did from a budgetary standpoint, from a fiscal operation, check Schedule C. And that is really our operations of our dollars, what we projected to use versus what we actually ended up spending. And also in the front of it, I want to thank Mrs. Calzano for picking up one of my typos. I probably typed that letter that's in here, the management letter, at 1 o'clock in the morning. And so I was able to fix that before it was finalized for the agenda today. But there's a couple of pages here. It's a section that's on Neil's letterhead. And it starts off, it's dated January 24th, and it says, Dear board members. And the first couple of pages kind of gives a quick year in review synopsis from a financial standpoint. And last year was a full COVID year. And while things were very different operationally, there were a number of things that did not occur, such as after school activities for most of the year. There were a few times where our buses weren't running. So we had significant savings last year in areas of energy, fuel, healthcare. Unfortunately, some people, because of COVID, either postponed procedures or had limited access to get to a doctor for certain things that may not have been a priority at that point in time. So from a financial standpoint, when you read the notes, you'll see we did well on a surplus. But those are the two sections that I look at. And then the second part that is there tonight to be approved is the AMR, which has, if there's any findings, and I'm glad to report there were no findings for the audit. And I want to thank everyone from the principals to the office staff, to my staff for all their hard work on this. And I do want to say thank you, although he's not here anymore, to Elliot Cass, who, even though he was leaving, I think he left the 23rd of July. He made sure that the auditors had all the schedules done before he walked out the door. And he actually came back a couple times and met me at night, and we went through some things that he had been working on and finished the work up for us. So while he's not here, I want to say a special thank you to him. So that's the only comment I have on that. And then in terms of the budget, I wanted, the governor gave his presentation today. It seems like there's some additional funding for education. Our state aid has not been populated in the portal yet. Hopefully, I'm expecting sometime tomorrow afternoon. So we'll see. Hopefully, we're even, or we've been very fortunate in the past couple of years. Even we've got a few extra dollars, we've lost a few extra dollars. There's nothing been devastating like some of our neighbors who are S2 districts that are losing millions of dollars each and every year. So I will put out an email to the board tomorrow or Thursday at the latest in terms of what our state aid is. And then on the 22nd will be our adoption of the tentative budget. So I did want to put this on the admin report now to have the board members, if you have any questions or comments from our last meeting, if you want to make them now or you want there's something for us to look at between now and then, speak now if you can, or send me an email in the next couple of days, because I'm going to put the final touches on the budget once the state aid numbers come in and start to prepare the package that we have to deliver to the county office. So does anyone have questions, comments, concerns from our meeting last time?
Can I ask you, Bob?
Sure.
I'm sorry. Thank you. When I was looking at the audit, I'm looking and I'm seeing those surplus numbers. Now, how did you deal with those in the budget?
So in this year's budget?
Yeah.
So if you go to the AMR report, you'll actually see the detailed calculations, how they figure out what our surplus is. So every June, usually the first meeting in June, I'll have the board pass a resolution that allows us to move a maximum of X amount of dollars into our reserve accounts. So what we did was not to have excess surplus. We put $3.5 million in capital reserve, and then we moved an extra, I think it was $150,000 back into maintenance reserve. Maintenance reserve has a much lower cap on it than what the capital reserve does. And so actually, when you get the report from the finance meeting, we actually took a quick look at the approved long-range facility plan. So we have $92 million worth of approved projects on there. So we can carry approximately $50 million in capital reserve for our share of those projects. Not saying we're going to do them all. So that's how I manage the surplus there. Part of the calculations too is you have to also deduct what we're going to use for the current year budget. So there was $2 million right off the top that went into plug into the 21-22 budget that was starting. So calculations in the back. It's not that difficult to follow, but if you have questions about it, just ask me. Because I do the same thing. Once we get into May, I create the same spreadsheet for us. I start plugging numbers in. So I have a good understanding as to where we're going to end at the end of the year. So I can put that resolution on the agenda for you guys to approve.
Okay.
So that's how we manage that. Anyone else?
I think I sent my questions to Ellen out earlier today, so.
Okay. Yeah.
17 million. I showed you.
Yeah. Was that from the audit?
Yes,
That-
regarding.
So yeah, if you can just tell me the way we write the reports, they look at the data in different ways on each of the tables that are presented.
Correct.
So in one section, surplus might have been X, might have been a little bit the numbers. So if you could let me know exactly where you're looking at, but a lot of it has to do with if you read the first couple pages of that report that I wrote, it comes from the fact of because we didn't operate normally last year. Healthcare was the biggest contributor. Energy was another contributor. You know, typically we'd have people, especially in the wintertime, rec uses our buildings for basketball,
Right.
you know, 7 days a week. We didn't have that last year. So when we left at, 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock, the buildings went down into their setback mode for energy and we weren't consuming. We didn't have people in the buildings on Saturdays and Sundays for the most part until we got to the end of the year.
Right.
So, fuel costs were down. We had a number of special needs parents decide not to send their child out of district, and then they kept them in the placement for a year. So we weren't paying to transport those students, or we weren't paying to the tuition. So we did see significant savings last year because of a lack of, a full operational year.
Yeah. So I think what I was just trying to do was to try to figure out where that all went, like how that broke down and where that.
If you look
it
at the,
looked like it was like between 7 and 8 million.
if you look at the C section
That
of the
section?
audit, you'll
Okay.
see what we originally started the budget,
Uh-huh.
what it ended up being through transfers, and then what we actually spent.
Okay.
And you'll be able to see that there. And you'll see the big number comes from, like I said, it comes from benefits, comes from energy, it comes from our bigger numbers. There were some salary savings. We did things differently. Well, we had no substitutes to pay. We budget several $1 million a year to pay substitutes. Didn't happen. So we had a lot of items that we planned for just as the pandemic started that never occurred. We didn't run sports for most of the year. There was a lot of things that just didn't happen. And then we were supposed to buy a number of buses outright. I think I had about $700,000 in equipment, and we decided not to buy them outright, and we lease purchased them instead because we weren't sure what, as a district, we were going to require to do for COVID.
Okay.
For PPE. So
Separating.
correct. So we actually were a little bit more conservative than we probably had to be. Hindsight being 2020 a year later, but we took some, in the very beginning, there was a lot of uncertainty. So that's where a lot of the money lapsed from.
Okay.
All right. And what we're seeing this year is it's a more normalized year.
Right.
A lot of those savings aren't happening. We talked about in the budget presentation, fuel prices. I mean, recreation's in here. I think their season's just about done. They're in here 7 days a week. So yep, that's where it came from.
Thanks, Bob.
Anyone else? All right. Thank you.
Good report.
The first one is the report required to be given for the school self-assessment for determining grades under the Anti-Bullying Bill of Rights. Just a little explanation. Each school school climate team is responsible for self-assessing their practices, protocols connected to the HIB law, and the max grade is 78. Katina is 74, Applegate 76, Barkalow 77, Eisenhower 77, Erickson 74, Donovan 73, West Freehold 77, Early Childhood Learning Center 78, for a district average of 76. And then the bullying report for this period, there were 6 reports received, 4 were founded, and 2 were unfounded.
Okay. Any questions on HIB? Seeing none, this is going to be the first opportunity for public participation. As you know, this board offers 2 opportunities for public participation. The first opportunity is on agenda items only. Therefore, if anyone wishes to address the board regarding any item on the agenda this evening, please write your name and address on the sign-in sheet and state your name for the record. Statements are limited to 3 minutes in length and should not be obscene. Is there anyone who'd like to address the board on agenda items? Okay.
Renata Brand, short question. Can we get a copy of the audit? Is it included in the package?
It's it's attached to the agenda this evening online. And then,
It's online.
yeah, and then tomorrow we'll post it in, underneath, I think it's our district, there's a section for the audit will be, so it'll be in 2 places. You can get it right from the agenda, and tomorrow we'll have it posted in another spot online.
And let me ask you, does that include the 5 million of ESSER funds?
It would include any of the ESSER funds that we accepted last year, yes.
So they're designated separately?
Yep, there's some funds that were accepted last year, and there were the larger pots of money were accepted this year.
I have a question. Could you explain a little more about the bullying assessment and what exactly that is, as far as how they're scoring and rating themselves in the schools?
Sure. It's not a good explanation as far as what they require to do this. It seems like it's about the incidents themselves. So that self-assessment is basically different categories. It goes through the programs, approaches, or initiatives we have for anti-bullying, training on the policy for staff and students, other staff instruction and training programs, anything in the curriculum that's related to HIB, the staff so that we have the correct positions filled that's required by law, our reporting procedures and our investigating procedures, and our subsequent reporting. So it's all connected to the law and how we implement it.
Yeah, I'm not quite getting that, how you come up with the assessment in general. Like, what would you consider like a bullying incident? Like, what is?
Okay, so the state, under Governor Christie, he legislated the definition of bullying. So when he did that, subsequently there was a policy written for schools that we had to follow connected to bullying and that legislated definition. As part of the law, we have to train staff. We have to go through a reporting procedure with paperwork. We have to report it at board meetings. There's a timeline, and it's asking us. Then the state puts together this assessment, and they ask the team to go back and look at your timeline, your paperwork, your reporting, and that you're in compliance with everything that the state, or I guess the legislator and the state, really require for that law.
Any other questions? Okay, moving on to personnel. Ms. Tolman?
Thank you. The Personnel Committee met tonight. We went over the agenda. We talked about long-term substitutes and a request for sabbatical. Present were myself, Ms. Vendatoli, Mrs. Lambert, and Mrs. Breathauer. I'd like to move the following items. Retirement of Barbara Cross, effective July 1st, and we would like to thank her for her 25 years of service and wish her well. Resignations as listed. Creation of positions as listed. New employment as listed. Welcome to our district. We're very happy to have you. Adjusted start dates as listed. Salary adjustments as listed. Change of assignments as listed. And we'd like to congratulate Christy Patmore, our new district data specialist, and Sharon Timmons, our new principal for ECLC. Thank you so much. Happy to have you here. Change of assignment as listed. Leaves of absence as listed. Grant salary as listed. The consultant update as listed. Rescind PTO honorarium as listed. PTO honoraria as listed. Elementary task team as listed. Rescind social studies curriculum writing committee member as listed. Curriculum committee as listed. Track officials as listed. Mentor as listed. Certified substitutes as listed. And non-certified substitutes as listed.
Does anybody have any questions on any of the personnel items? Okay, seeing none, can I have a second?
Second.
And a roll call?
Mrs. Costanza? Yes. Mrs. Cozzolino?
Yes, on everything except I need to abstain on number 18.
Number 18, all right. Mr. Gardula?
Yes.
Mrs. O'Sullivan?
Yes.
Mrs. Thoman?
Yes.
Mrs. Vendatoli?
Yes.
Mr. Amoroso?
Yes.
Mrs. Lambert?
Yes.
Motion's carry.
Curriculum and policy would be, who's handling that? Mary?
Sorry. We did meet this evening. Present were myself, Mr. Gorgiulo, Mrs. Montgomery, and Mr. Dickstein. We discussed all the items on the agenda, any questions we had. We discussed Mrs. Bonnie Hohenschultz' new appointment, which Neil announced earlier. We went over the HIB self-assessment. We went over the policies for first reading. We went over the policies for second reading. And we discussed policies that would be upcoming as well. And that's what we covered. I would like to move those minutes, as well as number 3, the course reimbursements as listed. Number 4, the HIB district and school grades as listed. Number 5, the first readings of policies. Policies number 0167, which is the public participation in board meetings. It's just a language change there. Policy 1110, which is the organizational chart to reflect our new assistant superintendent of curriculum. And then policy 1648.14, which is the safety plan for healthcare settings in school buildings. I would also like to move the second reading of policies 1648.11. That's the road forward, health and safety. That makes mask optional in public schools. And policy 5541, which is the anti-hazing. I would also like to move number 7, which is home instruction, and as listed, and number 8, the student teacher practicum observation and placements as listed. Can I have a second?
Second.
Anybody have any questions? Yeah, after questions. Any? No? Okay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any noes or abstentions? No, motion
Motion's carry.
carries. Finance, Facilities, and Transportation, Ms. O'Sullivan.
Okay, we met tonight as a committee, and the following people were in attendance: Mr. DeVita, Ms. Williams, Mr. Amoroso, Mrs. Costanza, and myself. We discussed the HVAC bids, which were on tonight's agenda. The bids came in slightly under budget. The work will be done over the next 2 summers, with the majority occurring in 2023. Water testing was discussed, and we discussed the state mandated process for water testing. Long-range facility plan, we discussed the plan that was recently approved by the DOE. There are 92 million in approved budgets. The majority of the projects are for roofs, HVAC, and controls. We currently have $10.8 million in capital reserves. The audit, which was just discussed, the results of which were discussed on tonight's agenda. We also looked at the agenda items that are listed. I would like to move number 3, which is certifications as listed. Number 4, Secretary and Treasurer's report as listed. Bills and claims of $2,481,158.02 as listed, and thank Ms. Costanza for reviewing all those bills. Number 6, travel and related expenses as listed. Number 7, transfers as listed. Number 8, donations as listed. Number 9, rescinded transfers as listed. Number 10, disposals as listed. Number 11, extended school year program change of location as listed. Number 12, rescinded honorarium as listed. Number 13, honoraria as listed. Number 14, procurement audit corrective action plan as listed. 15, termination of out-of-district contract as listed. 16, out-of-district contract as listed. 17, acceptance of bids for projects for 21K086-HVAC upgrades at multiple schools as listed. Number 18, the award of bid for project 21K086 HVAC upgrades at middle schools as listed. 19, the withdrawal from capital reserve account as listed. 20, the 2020-2021 comprehensive annual financial report as listed. And that is it. Any questions?
We have a second.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Can we reopen it?
What did you miss?
When we did the first meeting, I voted no on the.
No.
16, 14, and 11. I want to continue to be consistent. I want to put a no on those 2
Okay,
because it's related to COVID.
so then can I
don't know.
I
Right.
think I have to move to
I'm
go
glad
back
Mr.
to
Gross-
that section, correct?
You have to reopen and.
I have to reopen that
We haven't
section.
adjourned the meeting yet, so if someone wants to change their vote for tonight,
Yeah.
on tonight's agenda, that would be perfect.
Okay.
Thank you.
So just on that one policy?
16, 48, 11, and the other one. 14.
So the old and the
That
new.
doesn't change the outcome of the.
Yep.
Doesn't help change, but I
Okay.
want my vote recorded.
Okay.
Thank you.
As is usual, I like to combine old business, new business, and president's remarks in one section. So With regard to old business, we brought up in the past, starting to recognize students at our board meetings again. We discussed it. I think we first are going to have our staff recognition for our teacher and support staff of the year. And then following that, I'm going to remind all the building level administrators to let us know if there are things going on in your building that you'd like acknowledged at the board meeting. As Mr. Dickstein read earlier, there's a lot going on in our building, so it would be nice to have the connection back with the students and the families to have them recognized. Also, in new business, we need to start thinking about our board retreat. So if each board member can get back to me as to when you want to have that retreat, whether it's a weeknight, stick with the Tuesday, what works. Some have graduate schools, some have jobs, children have sports. So just get back to me at any point in time to let me know what you're thinking. Sooner, later, summer, now,
When would
spring.
you like to have it by? You gotta give us a deadline.
It took us a
I-
very long
I-
time last time.
I have no preference. That's up to you. I'm just the facilitator. So if you all say you're busy, you're got a lot going on, kids, sports, everything else, and the summer's better, I'm fine with the summer. If someone feels that we have some pressing issues that need to start to be addressed, by all means, we can do that as well. I don't care. I'm easy.
By June.
Again, I want
I
to
don't care.
thank all the parents, our staff, and our administrators who carried our school district over the past 2 years. I'm sure there were a lot of grateful people to have the mask mandate lifted this week. One thing I want to say, and I will try to be as succinct as possible in saying it, is that I want to thank you all for your steadfast professionalism. During COVID, things occurred very quickly, so rapidly that even medical professionals weren't sure how to handle the situation. Medical professionals made some very quick decisions with very little information and very little time in which to make those decisions with a virus that was not acting like a normal virus. They did the best that they could. As time evolved and studies be released, I'm sure we will find that some of those decisions that were made were great, some maybe not so great, some valid, some not so valid. The point is, though, that during this entire time, you all, the staff, our administrators, even our children in our schools, rolled with the punches. They acted with measured calm and rational behavior because that was what was in the best interest of the students. And every member of this board had one goal in mind, and that was to keep our children in school and as healthy as possible for every possible day that we can keep them there learning every day. So again, this board thanks our administrators and our staff wholeheartedly for your steadfast dedication over the past 2 years. With that, we will move on to our second opportunity for public participation. As you know, this second opportunity is for anyone who wishes to address the board on any matter. So if you'd like to address the board, please state your name and address on the sign-in sheet, and place your name and address on the sign-in sheet, state your name for the record. Your questions or comments should be limited to 3 minutes in length and should not be obscene. So if anyone would like to address the board, please come to the podium.
Good evening. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Jessica Pegenkoff. I'm a teacher at Laura Donovan School. I'm here today to speak on behalf of myself and many of the staff members at Laura Donovan. Some staff emailed you this week regarding our concern and the impact of changing the hours of Laura Donovan for next year. Laura Donovan is the best. We have a community of support from our families, and as a staff, we love coming to work here. Many of us have worked in other places and in other buildings. We know the grass is not greener, and we want to stay working at LDS to finish our careers. Mrs. Benbrook and Mrs. Rosen lead us to be consummate professionals while also showing us how much they care about us as individuals. We are family at Laura Donovan, yet many of us face a large dilemma when it comes to the proposed time change. For us, the change in time impacts our personal families so significantly that we are being left with an abysmal decision. Who do we choose? Our families at home or our school that we love? I'm heartbroken thinking about making such a decision. Speaking just for myself, having worked through the pandemic with 3 children under 10, I've always felt supported, respected, and that my administration had my back, both as a teacher and as a mom. Thinking about leaving such a supportive work environment is devastating. I have worked hard to advocate for my students for years, ensuring they received the best possible education, and now I'm advocating for myself and my staff. We need consistency after COVID, not another change that will impact us far beyond the classroom, including loss of income for some and additional daycare costs. We need continuity from year to year, not having to move our children's schedules and impact their social and emotional needs. Our kids and students have been through enough. We need compassion from a board who has kids and know this impact is deep and wide. Our hearts are broken and our morale is dwindling thinking about the long-term impact of this change. Unprecedented times call for unprecedented measures. Look beyond what we know and find a new solution. Be thrifty in other areas and put priority on keeping the staff of Laura Donovan together so we can rebound from COVID changes before we shift gears yet again. We know you can collectively work through the budget while maintaining our school hours at Laura Donovan. I have a petition signed by 54 members of the staff at LDS, including teachers, TAs, secretarial staff, and custodial staff, all whom will be affected by this change. It's 80% of our full-time staff and 92% of our tenured teachers. With much respect, please, please find a way to keep our staff together and keep our times the same. Our staff motto is, I'll be there for you. LDS, stronger together. We hope to continue this motto in the future. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I present this to you? And some letters.
Thank you.
Not to go too into detail, but there's when we put out the letter, the one thing that we were not clear about is it was about the 5th iteration of the what to do about our transportation issue. So for those that are not familiar, there's a national shortage of bus drivers, and in some states, they've brought in the National Guard to drive the buses. We here have experienced an issue as well as our surrounding districts, not only regionally, but in the county and in the state, where we just don't have enough bus drivers. In order to accommodate that, the first thing that we did is added 2 full-time positions, or 2 guaranteed positions, I should say, for substitutes. In a typical year, the way that our cycle works is we have a full staff of drivers, and we have upwards of, I'll say 10 substitutes. And as staff retire, bus drivers or resign, a substitute moves into a contracted position. Right now, the only 2 substitutes that we have are not interested in contracts, and they're not consistent substitutes. So we don't have enough drivers, and we don't have enough substitutes. What's been happening is our office staff and our transportation director are driving almost daily. Many of us have covered the office or been van aides because we don't have aides on our vans. It's not about the budget. It's actually about the manpower and the lack of drivers and aides in our area to hire. It actually, if I'm speaking correctly, this solution increases the budget somewhat because we're trying to solve the issue of our responsibility of getting to kids to school in a timely, efficient, and safe manner. So it's about the 5th iteration we did, and we looked at multiple factors. And the fact is why Donovan is last in the tiers is because there are 200 less students compared to any other school that require busing. And when you have 8 buses and vans, that naturally goes at the end for those that start at the beginning where our middle schools are. It's a very difficult decision, and we'd rather change nothing, but at this moment, we're unable to get our students to school and meet our obligation when we know we have 5 drivers at the minimum retiring at the end of this, or as we reach the end of the year. You have to
come
come.
to the podium.
Yeah, feel free to send me an email. I'll respond to you.
Would anybody else like to address the board?
Hi, my name is Ann Novotny. Not a very good public speaker, so forgive that. I've lived in Freehold Township for 25 years, and both of my kids went through the Freehold Township schools. I just wanted to say that for every one person complaining about what they feel is wrong, there are 100 parents who know what has been done right. They just aren't as vocal about it. Many, many people are behind you in your decisions and are thankful for what you've done for our kids. Thank you for always spending our tax dollars judiciously. Told you. Thank you for always putting the children first. Thank you for working to make the curriculum better year after year, be it new programs in the elementary school or block scheduling in the middle schools. This board has always strived to improve, not for ego, but for the children's sake. Most importantly, thank you for your time, which you give voluntarily, because our kids are all the better for it. I and many, many other parents are extremely proud to say that our kids came out of this school system. So when the tide seems against you, please remember how many people are behind you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
We're not a brand. I don't recall if this was mentioned before, but I want to just put on the record that it's not illegal to create a recording inside this meeting. This was confirmed to me by Michelle Lambert on February 18th. Thank you, Michelle, for that correspondence. I do have a couple of other questions. On the Freehold Township website, the ESER application is shown. There are 5 questions, 5 answers. The answer to question 4 states in part, funds are being allocated for a consultant to work with teams of staff to develop a comprehensive social emotional learning program. Was this discussed with parents? Was a survey done of parents? And if it was so, can we have a copy? Will teachers now be certified social workers or licensed psychiatrists or licensed psychologists? If you're trying to teach love, compassion, and sympathy, then that is a moral and ethical issue, very plausible. But are we looking to government to teach our children morals and ethics? Because if we are, then we're in a bad situation. The situation is called atheistic communism. Do you know what that is? It's when the state teaches that there is no God and that the God is the state. In other words, the state will provide. That to me and to a lot of other parents sounds a lot like where we are now. Government is at this point mocking God. Government is by its own nature corrupt. So anything that is corrupt and mocks God and then pretends to be able to teach children is more proof of his own evilness. Today, government schools are using social emotional learning not to educate, but to transform children's core values, attitudes, beliefs, and behavior. That is evil. We as parents and teachers have a duty to oppose any evil and to protect our children against it. I have more to say on this, but I'll leave that for another day because I know I'm coming close to my 3 minutes. So good night, and God bless America.
Thank you. Would anybody else like to address the board?
Frank Brooks. To reflect a little on what Renato was just saying, there was an incident a few weeks ago at Barcelo School where a student, we'll say unknown gender, but a girl walked into the boys' room, and there were several boys in the room, in the bathroom already, and they simply asked her, "Are you a boy?" She insisted that she was a boy, and then walked out. And later, the students were brought down to the principal's office, where they were basically harassed and bullied by the principal, since bullying is a big issue, telling them you were never allowed to ask someone if they're a boy or a girl. You can only ask their pronouns. These are 11 and 12-year-olds. And we're playing this game already with them. They were also told that they felt uncomfortable in the boys' room, that they should leave and go to a gender-neutral bathroom, go find a teacher or a counselor. So the 11-year-old boy who needs to urinate now has to leave because someone of the opposite sex is in the room with them because they're uncomfortable, but they're in the wrong for being uncomfortable. At no point, any of you growing up, any of us, we had boys' locker rooms, girl locker rooms. You would never in a million years have had that, especially at that age. So the idea that we are now, rather than teaching our kids things like writing cursive writing, we're teaching them to question their own sexuality, their own gender, to just sow confusion into their minds is a little bit insane. And while we're on the topic of bullying, the actions of this board, the last couple of meetings, was a real insight into what you put our children through the last 2 years. The fact that you would stamp your feet and throw a hissy fit because grown-ups refuse to bow down to your demands to put a mask on in this room only shows what our children have been going through, being bullied and yelled at to pull your mask over your nose for 2 years. But you're concerned about bullying, yet here are the bullies here, sending out a mass email to the entire community, distorting the events, and several times flat out lies in there of what happened at a meeting.
They were not
To
lies.
say that, yeah, and here's the irony, you bring up the idea that the police at the time were compared to brown shirts, and you want to bring up the Holocaust, yet here it was, armed men coming to meetings to intimidate, silence, and remove opposition is precisely what the brown shirt's job was. Now, if you want to go on with following the rules, as Mr. Amoroso said, what we are proposing is anarchy, when here we are, the last place pretty much on earth, demanding we wear
Mr.
masks
Brooks,
and
your
bullies.
time is up. Thank you for your comment.
That wasn't 3 minutes, you know it
That
wasn't.
was 3 minutes.
So
We were timing.
you wanna go on? All right.
Your time
Well,
is up.
you know what the point is. All right. These are where the real bullies are.
Your time
Really
is
look
up,
in the
sir.
mirror.
Take your seat.
Hi, my name is Sal Saluccio. I just want to know what the protocol is for the hand sanitizing in the school.
At this moment, they're still out in front of the school. As kids walk in, they can have their own. We're looking we usually wait about 2 weeks when we make a change to remove anything further. So we did the masks off on the buses as soon as we could. Now masks are off in the schools. So we were told the guidance was to continue the prevention that's in place. So we'll look to start pulling back as the numbers consistently stay. So give us about another week.
And that guidance
We'll
is
start pulling
from
them
who?
back. That's from the State Department of Education.
So is the hand sanitizing mandatory or mandated?
It's recommended. It's not mandated. No.
So then I think the students should have an option if they want to do the sanitizing or not.
Okay.
No, I'm just saying is
I-
okay. Is that so? Are you going to say, all right, you know, you can choose what you want to do?
I will have a discussion with our head nurse. Taking your comment into consideration, we will definitely speak with our head nurse, and then if we can take that recommendation, we'll implement it.
I mean, because 2 years of putting chemicals on your hands like throughout the day, I don't think is too healthy. And
Okay.
also, it was said that the kids rolled with the punches. I don't think they had a choice. It was either put the mask on. That was the only choice. I don't think there was anything about rolling with punches. So, if you want to discuss that, thank you.
Karen Zuccarelli. I work as a TA at West Freehold. And I just want to say to everybody here, if you have not been in a school in the last 2 years, you have no idea what it's been like. And I want to thank all of you for keeping us there, for keeping us home when you needed to, for keeping us in school when you needed to, and for just doing this when you did it. It has not been easy. It has not been ideal, but we did it. The kids are super resilient. The kids roll with the punches, and you guys have done an outstanding job. I know people who work in other districts and other states. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
And Neil and I are never going to discuss snow days again because snow days lead to 2-year vacations.
You know,
So,
you know, I just want to say for those of you that are not in our buildings, there's some misinformation out there that our students are kept in masks all day long, yelled at if their masks are pulled below, suffered any kind of punitive type of repercussion if their masks were not on their face, and that was simply not true. Children were allowed multiple mask breaks throughout the day. They also had many times during the day where they were not in a mask. What? Oh, did you want to
I'm
add to
sorry.
that?
Yeah, we understood that masks became uncomfortable, and we were not quick when they fell below the nose to rush to have them pulled up eventually, but it wasn't rushed to pull them up. Um, we were in the schools every day, and we required the masks to be on, yes, to be in compliance with the law. However, we were not quick each time when a child needed time or a staff member needed time with it below their nose to have them pull it up immediately.
Would anybody else like to address the board?
My name is Lauren Boyle. I live in Freehold Township. I am a parent, have 2 kids who are in this district's school age. And so I also would like to address the letter that was sent out by you, the board, on February 22nd to clear up any misinformation regarding the events that took place at the Board of Ed meeting on February 8th. I was here at the meeting on February 8th as a resident and as a parent. In your letter that you sent out, you state, and this is a quote, a group of individuals in attendance, many of whom are neither Freehold Township residents nor district parents. How can you make that statement? You don't know who's in this room. There's no sign-in. So I was a little confused by that statement, especially since I am a Freehold Township resident and I am a parent and I was in this room. So you go on to say in the letter that the people who were at that meeting, the individuals in attendance, are part of outside groups with ties to anti-public education agendas, which again, false information. Where are you getting that from? And the fact that you sent this letter out to the entire community, making these blanket statements that everybody that was here at that meeting is part of these groups is false information. The letter then goes on to say that repeated requests to comply were met with uncivil discourse, prompting intervention by the Freehold Township Police Department at the request of concerned attendees. It was you, the board, that called the police on the
No, it wasn't.
community.
This board did not call the police. No, we didn't.
Robert stood right here and said, "We're calling the police."
He's not the board
Well, he's sitting up there with you.
because he's our business administrator.
Okay, so maybe it wasn't an actual board member, but it was somebody up there. It was not the community that called the police in. Let's see, where am I here? So basically, calling the police over a handful of adults who didn't want to put a mask on, that's what caused the chaos. It wasn't the people here causing the chaos. It was you calling the police that caused the chaos. And then you all packed up your stuff, walked out of the room, said meeting adjourned.
Your time's up. Thank you for your comments.
And we were made to leave the room. The police said the meeting was over and we
Your
all
time-
had to
Your
leave
time
the
is
room.
up. Thank you for your
I
comments.
did not leave that meeting voluntarily. And in your letter, you state that everyone left voluntarily, and that is not true.
Then I guess she was trespassing too. I guess she was trespassing too. Would anybody else like to address the board? Okay. Seeing no one, we're going to move on to executive session. Action will be taken in public after this executive session. That doesn't always happen, so I thought I'd give you a heads up on that. So whereas pursuant to NJSA 10-412B, the Board of Education may exclude the public from that portion of a public meeting at which the board discusses any of the matters described in NJSA 10-412B, items 1 through 9. Now therefore be it resolved that in accordance with the provision of the Open Public Meeting Act, the Board of Education shall conduct a closed session pursuant to the personnel and legal exceptions prescribed by NJSA 10-412 for the purpose of discussing personnel, termination of employees, and matters concerning the collective negotiations and/or negotiations of terms and conditions of employment for employees of the Board of Education regarding substitute band attendance and the TWU contract. It is anticipated that the length of time of this executive session will be 60 minutes and that action will be taken in public after the end of that executive session. Be it further resolved that said discussion may be disclosed to the public when reasons for discussing and acting upon it in closed session no longer exist. So for those of you that want to wait for the conclusion of the meeting, you can do so. If not, and you choose to leave, thank you for coming out this evening and joining our board meeting. We'll take a 5-minute recess before we go into executive session. Yeah, motion.
Okay, first.
Carrie?
Okay.
Yep.